So there's been this strain of thinking on the real left that Sanders is just basically stamping out any kind of real, political movement in favor of the bourgeoisie. The whole thing, right? To be honest with you, I think that the argument is basically correct on some level. This is a counterpunch, which is a kind of a it's a kind of a libertarian source, but it's kind of like it kind of swings back and forth. They publish articles by right libertarians and left libertarians, so it's just kind of like a broad libertarian source. Again, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a progressive. I'm an anarchist, an anarcho-communist, a left libertarian socialist. So I'm not in your tent, but I kind of might want to pull you out of the tent, kind of thing. And I do think that this article is actually describing the situation properly. It's just that it's overestimating where America stands in its social advancement. If America were Europe or Canada, this argument would be reasonable, but the levels of inequality in America, along with its culture of glorified militarism, and its, in truth, widespread working class support for the most brutal types of social Darwinism imaginable, make it more comparable to Dickensian Britain, and the necessary tactics more aligned to those used there, or elsewhere when the social advancement was so low. American leftists need to stop thinking of America as an advanced country and reject the kind of tactics we have been using in the modern world in favor of the kind of tactics that the modern world utilized a century prior, when it was at the level of social development that America is at today. So America cannot be talking about, moving from advanced capitalism to communism or socialism, right? It can't be talking about making that transition. You can talk about making that transition elsewhere in the world that didn't deindustrialize. But America has pulled the entire rug out from underneath itself and has put itself back into Gilded Age conditions. And so leftists have to adjust to that and mentally move themselves back to where they were. It's a shitty deal, but maybe we shouldn't have let that happen. Canada's moved backwards, but not nearly as far, right? You need to think of America the same way you think of Mexico, because that's about where it is, right? The social revolution has to come first, but in America they need a social awakening before they can have a social revolution. The struggle in America should consequently be focused on winning the kinds of basic reforms that have been won elsewhere in the developed world. You can't start talking about socialism in America until there's a functioning public education system. Okay? So, yes, there's distributive problems, but if you're talking about distributive justice in America, you're getting ahead of yourself. We're not at Marx yet. We're at Rousseau. We need to start talking about basic public education. It can't begin to organize until it has a functioning healthcare system, and etc. You don't even have to worry about Maoism when the most impoverished are told by their religious leaders and believe that what they need to do to get ahead is to work harder. And that what's preventing them from getting ahead is the government, and the government's policies designed to strangle the free market. That's where the working class is. The working class blames the government for strangling the free market. How do you get somewhere with that? You need education before you can even think about getting to the next step. America is not an advanced capitalist country. Maybe it was 50 years ago. Today, it's an impoverished third world, backwards, rural backwater. So yeah, in a lot of ways, Sanders is a front. But it's less that he's conspiring to give legitimacy to a party that doesn't deserve any, and more that they're playing him like a fool. And that the fact that he keeps walking into these traps and not really reacting properly might demonstrate that he is a fool. At the end of the day, he might be the only person that really believes in what he's pushing. Because he's the only person that's naive enough to fall into it. He's really arguing for nothing more than the realization of the promises of Eleanor Roosevelt more than a half century ago. Minor concessions to capitalism that deliver the basic reward of the most fundamental human rights. And they are very minor concessions. So the article is rejecting them as insufficient, and they are, and they should be seen as insufficient. But you have to start somewhere. They have to be seen as basic starting points. Yes, they're insufficient. But America has no revolutionary potential right now. Because it's been kept at the most basic levels of ignorance. It doesn't have anything resembling an education system. And its people are reared on institutional violence. They fight each other. They don't fight, the bastards. They're simply too deeply brainwashed. And in that respect, Bernie is actually exactly what they needed, whether he gets crucified in the end or not. So yeah, the article is saying that he's not an end. Okay, he's not. And to see him as an end is an error. He's the very start. And everything has to start somewhere. And it has to start here in America. Because that's what they don't have, and what they need is education and healthcare.